Hi, and welcome to the week ahead. I'm Tony Nash, and as usual, we have our team, Sam Rines and Albert Marko. Tracy's not with us today. Before we get started, I'd like to ask you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. It helps us a lot get visibility, and it really helps you get reminded when a new episode is out so you don't miss anything. Gosh, big week for everyone. I wish I had fallen asleep a week ago and just woken up now after Friday's trading. But it's been a big week all around for everyone. Guys, we really have a lot to talk about this week. We're covering the markets. Is everyone a bear now? That's one of our big topics that we'll have Sam lead on. Next is what's next for crypto. A lot of action on crypto, a lot of scary things happening with crypto. And then some news out of China or speculation out of China. We're asking, is China falling apart? So Sam, let's start with you first. You know, I guess one of the most relevant items I've seen circulating, and it was in your newsletter today, is the top issues for Americans on the screen right now. It's clearly inflation. As long as that's a top consideration, the pressure on the Fed to bring inflation down is huge. So you've been pretty consistent with 3 times 50 basis point hikes for May, June, and July. What's really changed in trading today? And is everyone still bearish?
Yeah, I mean, everyone still seems to kind of be floating a little bearish, but when I kind of like to go back to, the number one concern is inflation, we shot ourselves in the foot. And then the second one is getting shot in the head, right? It's violent crime and crime, right?
Yep.
You add those two together and it's a
great
even larger portion of inflation. So, it's safety and food, right? People, like to eat and, they want to be able to eat and they want to feel safe. I think it's that simple. Those should be the top 2 concerns in this type of environment when you have the data pointing towards, continuing higher inflation numbers and continuing crime. On the, is everyone a bear front? I think it's a little complicated, right? Because, if you look at, the flows into and out of indices and into and out of fixed income. And when you look at the flows, it's easy to kind of say everyone's a bear, right? Pouring money into treasuries, taking money out of indices. But at the same time, underneath the surface, you really want to be careful on what you're a bear on and what you're not, right? There's a lot of things that can still make money in this environment. Oil, food, etc., can still make money. Right. And there's a lot of things that are probably still going to get torched. Anything, anything that's a little high beta is probably not the place you want to be for the whole time. Tradable, but unlikely to be a long-term type trade.
Like I noticed some of the text coming back today, and that's great. And I hope people don't lose more there. But is that something that you would consider kind of a be careful if you're going back in type of trade?
Some of it, not all of it. I mean, there's a lot of tech that actually looks fairly attractive here, whether it's from a valuation perspective or whether it's from, a very long-term perspective. A lot of stuff, re-rated fast, and it looks attractive. And there's a lot of stuff that looks like it's probably going bankrupt, right? I wouldn't be trying to bottom tick Carvana.
Actually, to expand on that, Sam, about who's a bear and who's, if we're bears or bulls or whatnot, I kind of think that we have to separate the higher grade institutions versus the retail dip buyers that are just looking for that get rich quick return. Many of the institutions, the ones I've talked to, are absolutely still bearish. They don't see really value in this economy until the market until 3,700. Coincidentally, one of the hedge fund guys told me at 3,500 you have an actual financial crisis in the United States just because everything's leveraged up. So I don't think that the Fed was even going to want to flirt with going down, past the 3,700s, in my opinion.
So in 100% on that, Albert, right? You have to separate those two teams of people, right? The dip buyers are going to try every single time to get rich quick. Real long-term allocators are going to take their time here. They're not going to rush in. They're not going to, those are very large positions they have to take, and they don't get to move in, call it for 2 or 3 weeks. They have to move in for very long periods of time. So to Albert's point, I don't think that should be underrated, period.
You can just look at the valuations of some of these companies that are still out in the stratosphere. Like one of the ones I've recommended, Mosaic, Titan Tire. I mean, they're just tenfold of what they were, in 2020. How do you buy these things? You can't buy these things.
You can't.
For a long time. No.
Yep.
Right. We've seen a lot of chatter about margin calls over the past week and a half. Obviously, that's been scary for the first wave of kind of people going in, but when that second wave hits, when does that start to hit, that second wave? Once we go, 3,800 or lower, or so is that when things get really scary?
Actually, I think part of the margin calls happened today, actually, Friday. I think a lot of guys had to liquidate positions and cover shorts and whatnot, and we got a little bit of a squeeze of a rally. So it didn't really feel like the Fed was pumping. It just felt like,
right.
People short covers and people trying to get stuff off the board.
Right. Okay.
100%. 100%.
Yeah,
and that's where I think that, I don't think you want to be in front of a wave of liquidation for, let's call it Sun and ARK, right? You do not want to be in front of either one of those two right now, period.
Yeah, it was nice to have a green day, but it didn't necessarily feel like a strong green day. So, okay, guys, let's move on to crypto. Albert, I think you're the man here. You've talked about crypto for a long time. It's bad. This week is bad. And we've got a chart for Luna on the screen. Luna fell from $90 last Thursday to 5/10,000ths of a cent today, I think. Their circulation went from 4 billion yesterday to 6.5 trillion today. So it doesn't sound very immutable to me. So the watching crypto fallout, it's been pretty terrible. Lots of people have lost lots of money. And people are questioning and cynical about words like immutable now. So can you so this is something that I think experienced people have expected, but what happens next? I mean, do we have a clearing out of some of these currencies? Do people just hold at 5/10,000ths of a cent? Do we see some of these actually become currencies, or is it all just going to get regulated and kind of thrown out the window?
Well, are they going to be currencies? No, they'll never be currencies.
Yep.
The dollar is going to be the currency of the world status for trade for the remainder of our lifetimes, whoever's alive today. That's just the basic fundamental fact that you have to come to grips with. Cryptos, this is like part one of the closing call for cryptos, in my opinion. They got a good dose of the reality that when things need to get liquidated, you're not liquidating residential towers in Miami on your portfolio. You're liquidating some Ponzi scheme cryptos that are in your pocket that your clients really made you get into to begin with. From the institutional side, from the retail side, as much as I want to gloat because I've been saying that this was going to happen for years, it's really not that funny, because you had guys out there pushing these crypto things and saying the dollar's dying, gold is dying, digital future, blah, blah, blah. Look at this chart, look at that chart. But the reality is there were nothing but pump and dump schemes, and people lost a lot of money. I had a friend that goes to school, his daughter goes to school with my daughter, and he told me months ago, I put everything to Litecoin for the college fund. I tried to reason with this guy, and just like, well, diversify, do something.
Please don't do that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, community college for that kid,
But Albert, they're following the lead of some analysts are credible. They have a credible history, and they've really started pushing this stuff. Now they've dialed it back, but some people who had previously been credible analysts were pushing this stuff. So
they're liars. They're all liars.
Had been.
Yeah.
Because they're sitting there.
You're right.
They're trying to get services sold and people to watch their YouTube channels and get the subscriptions up. So of course you're going to go and sit there and try to pump crypto to the retail crowd, because they don't know any better.
Right.
They don't know any better.
and anyone who looked, if you really dug into the Luna situation, you could understand very, very quickly how that could unwind in a way that was dramatic. I mean,
Right.
this wasn't even constructed as well as a pre-2008 money market fund.
Right.
I mean, at least you knew what the money market fund held
Right.
behind it and how it was going to, actually return money to you. I mean, with Tether, it's supposed to be a crypto-ish money market fund. We still don't know what that actually holds. So the whole thing to me is regrettable. To Albert's point, right?
It is.
The two of us kind of got picked on when we giggled off, paying for oil and crypto earlier this year. But the two of us have been kind of like, no, not so much.
Yeah.
And so while it's tempting to kind of have that little bit of a cocky grin, it's a really, really sad situation, and there's a lot of money that got shredded very, very quickly there.
Very quickly, in less than a week. It's insane how much money. I mean, if anybody who follows me on Twitter knows that I invested in some Doge last year, stuck with it for a few months, got out. I did it because it was a joke of a coin. Everyone knew it was a joke of a coin. I wanted to be on a part of the joke, and I made some money at it. And that's it, right? That's it. You can't necessarily think of this stuff as a serious investment because it's so highly unregulated, and people engage in this pump and dump stuff.
Yeah, but see, we can have a conversation on this for hours. This is actually at the heart of the problem of the U.S. economy at the moment. All these gig employees, service industry and jobs and whatnot, they left work, right? Got into crypto, got stimulus checks, sat at home, kept getting unemployment, not going to work, and now we're stuck with the labor shortage in reality. I don't care what the Fed says and what Yellen says about the market, the labor market is good. The labor market is absolute trash right now. We have no workers anywhere right now. And this is part of it.
So that's a good question. With crypto kind of, at least temporarily, maybe permanently dying, does that help the employment picture? Does that help people come back to market even a little bit? Let's say
of course,
10% of the employment issue.
People had, tens of thousands of dollars in a Coinbase account that are now, $500.
Right.
They're gonna have to go back to their jobs, and that's just the reality of it. And if you want me to go even a step further, this is probably the intent of the Fed and the Treasury is to start eliminating this excess money, forcing people back to work.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. There was so in one of my notes this week that Tony, I think you saw, I sent out the video from SNL of Jimmy Carter, saying, "Hey, get 8% of your money out of your account and light it on fire." Guess what? The Fed just did that for millennials.
Yeah,
it's that simple. The Fed just lit 8% of at least 8% of millennial money on fire. Generally, right? And it's unlikely to come back that quickly. And I think if it wasn't a direct policy, it was a side effect that the Fed's sitting there going, "Oh, well, that works."
I guarantee you, I talked to a lot of people, it was a direct policy. I mean, I don't care. I'll throw the Fed under the bus. They deserve to be thrown under the bus anyways.
well, yeah, it is where it is. And I would assume more regulations coming at some point because people will scream, especially with Coinbase. I think it's Coinbase or one of the exchanges saying that they're going to undo a lot of the trades over the last 2 or 3 days.
Coinbase.
And so,
Okay.
there are no regulations at all. And
Okay.
Just call them the LME.
yeah, exactly. So crypto is the LME now, and it's insane. So a lot of consumer protections are going to be talked about. A lot of regulations are going to come in. I think that party's pretty much over. So
yeah, once the regulations start coming in from Congress and different governments in the world, they're going to see, how false their idea of decentralization really was.
yeah. So, okay, guys, let's move on to China. We've seen a lot over the past few weeks and really gossipy stuff about China. But today I saw a note from Mike Green on Twitter, which is on screen, talking about Xi Jinping and Li Keqiang and, Xi basically being sidelined on May 4th. I also saw another tweet yesterday, a guy going through Shanghai during the lockdown. If you haven't seen it, the first of the thread is on the screen now. Check it out. It's really interesting. Shanghai's empty, and it's really sad. So, you know, we've seen these really unsettling posts over the past several weeks out of China, from lockdowns to port closures to gossip that Xi is sidelined. So what, to you guys, what does that all mean? Is it something you're taking seriously? Do you think it's something that will have immediate effects? What does that look like to you?
You know, China's a big quagmire in itself. It's such a large country. You're going to have all sorts of rumors of Xi being sidelined, and unrest in different cities like Shanghai and whatnot. But the Chinese are pretty pragmatic. They know that things are not going really well, so they're going to have to lift off some of these just draconian policies with locking down people, because it's going to really hurt their economy. And part of it's probably because they're fighting inflation too. They're trying to cut down demand, and just until supplies catch up. I mean, they got problems over there with inflationary issues also.
With the deval, with the port closures, with a lot of other stuff that's happening there, their economy is already hosed, right? They're not necessarily, they're definitely not hitting 5.5, which is their target this year. And I think they'll be lucky to have a zero growth year. So, but I think, Albert, on the political side, a lot of this kind of theater that we're seeing play out on Weibo and Twitter and other things, do you think this is plausible?
I mean, of course it's plausible. I mean, you have the vulture circling around Xi right now. They want him out. I mean, so you have one elite group keeping him in power, but you most likely have 3 or 4 other elite groups within the CCP that want him out. There's no question about that. He can't even go out in public.
That's an important thing that many people don't think about, is there are parties within the party. The CCP is not a unified party. There are factions within the party. Many Westerners don't understand that. There are definitely factions within the party, and they'll stab each other in the back in a second. And so
there's factions even everywhere you go. People try to like China as one ruler, one party, one system, but even in the United States, you have the Tea Party, the Freedom Caucus, the Progressives, the modern, so on and so forth. I mean, it's all fragmented, no matter what you do.
Yeah, Sam. So China is second largest economy, ports closed, people in their houses, all of that stuff. So how long can they do this before it affects everybody, or has it already started to affect?
Oh, it's already affecting everything, right? The supply chains are already completely ruined because of it. I mean, there's no question about that. I think the real question is what happens when they reopen, right? I mean, we've got oil sitting at $109 and half of China's shut down. I mean, that is something that doesn't, I mean, it's kind of scary, right? You have a bunch of, people that aren't using as much as they should be right now. You begin to spin that back up. That could be a really interesting scenario overall. I don't know.
Sam, that actually loops back to what you were talking about, the Fed trying to fight inflation. No matter what policy they come up with, there's still supply chain shortages and labor and everything that no matter what they do, they can't fix.
Yes, they're hosed. I mean, it's an amazing world where you have half the Chinese. Let's just click through. Half the Chinese economy is shut down. You have the US dollar sitting at 105, 106, somewhere in there. And you have oil sitting at 110. I mean, anybody who's saying, oil prices look a little toppy here might want to look at what happens when the dollar falls and China's going. I mean, that's why
we're going to have inflation in the 5 to 7% range for the next 18 months. I can't see it going lower than that.
18 months, you say?
18 months. Well, how are they going to get it lower? China opens and then what? You know what I mean? And then you still have shortages everywhere. I mean, go to some of the stores. They have baby formula shortages. You have on any given day, you have like small materials you need from the home short everywhere.
Right.
Yep.
That's going to create artificial inflation. On top of that, you have wage inflation.
Right.
How do you even get that down? You know,
I mean,
Well-
the only way you get it down is having less employees, and the only way
well,
but look at that. I mean, look at Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley has started laying people off, and that's not getting enough. In
Well, you
Silicon
mentioned
Valley, I mean the
Carvana
startup
earlier.
world. I mean,
Yeah.
Carvana, but
Carvana's
it's
laid
more
off.
than just Carvana.
Yeah.
yeah. And then that's the thing. Like later in this year, Democrats and Joe Biden are going to have a real big problem with unemployment numbers. Starting to creep up. They can't hide that forever with the BLS manipulation.
No,
Right.
I mean, look at the household number. I mean, the household number is already not looking great,
Right.
and that's the one that they choose not to hide for a reason. You get, sure, the establishment's up, but you look at that household number and it's printing negative already, guys.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Sam, one more thing I want to cover is this has to do with China shut down, and it has to do with the possibility of political instability in China. So those are two separate issues. Your newsletter today talked about reshoring. So these things seem to provide more instability and a lack of reliability of Chinese sourcing. So what are you seeing to support the reshoring argument?
Oh, lots of things. I mean, you have Hyundai that's likely to announce a pretty big factory next week in Georgia. You have everyone from Micron to a bunch of other, call it higher tech firms beginning to announce that, they're moving back here. They're building here. They're going to manufacture here, or they're going to manufacture in Mexico, right? One or the other, right? Those, if you want to have China-like characteristics without supply chain issues, you go to Mexico, and that re-regionalization trend. That's a theme of mine. Is beginning to pick up steam, and it's going to pick up much more steam, in my opinion. North America is going to be basically, in my opinion, is going back to being the world's not manufacturing hub, but the world's high-end manufacturing hub. If you want something that it'll be like big Germany. Yeah,
I mean, that's just the most logical thing to do, is you start putting your supply chains closer to your luxury consumers, and you have to do that. But I've been high on the Canadian economy and the North American economy. I think Europe's absolutely just they're in deep trouble at the moment. So is Asia's, but Europe especially.
On that nearshoring note, guys, if Germany can't get power, will we start to see some German manufacturing firms potentially moving to the U.S.?
You already make AMGs here. Mercedes-Benz AMGs.
Yeah, but that's not necessarily.
They're made in Alabama
Yeah, but Tony, to your question, actually, I do have a colleague that works for an Austrian and German outfit, and they have been buying factories in the United States specifically for this reason. I mean, it's the only place that people are going to be buying things or has money. The Europeans don't have money at the moment. Their entire export industry in China is dead. And they've sat there and been lackadaisical and never sat there and try to put their networks back into Africa, where the real emerging market should be focused on. It's Africa. It's going to be bigger than Asia anyway. So,
let's also be honest. They just got done pulling out of Africa in some ways. A couple decades ago.
Yep.
I mean, they missed that boat. Yeah,
they did, and so did the Americans. So, hey guys, thank you very much. Really appreciate this. If you're watching, please like and subscribe. Guys, have a great weekend and have a great week ahead. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
Thanks, Tony.